making a traditional Guinness stew. Similar to an Irish stew, a little bit different, but we're making it vegan style. This dish is rich, it's hearty. It is seriously soul-soothing. You should make this on St. Patrick's Day.
Guinness stew is usually made with lamb or beef and stout. It's a popular pub dish. You could make the stew without the stout and just replace the liquid with more broth. But the stout gives the stew a very rich broth and a deep flavor. I'm obviously using all veggies, and I'll have to start by prepping them. I'm using a variety of root vegetables in this dish, including potatoes, carrots, and parsnips, as well as portobello mushrooms, celery, and onions. You can really play around with which vegetables you'd like to use, as well as the proportions. If you don't like one of the vegetables, like parsnips, leave them out or replace with turnips, beetroots, or celery root. I'm using a Dutch oven or cast iron pot in this recipe because I am putting the stew into the oven. You could just cook this on the stove if you'd rather. I'll leave instructions for stovetop cooking in the show notes. Once my pan is hot, I add the oil, onions, and celery. I'm going to cook these until they begin to soften. Then the garlic, seasonings, and tomato paste go in. I want to toast the seasonings and allow some of that canned tomato flavor to cook off before adding other ingredients. This only takes a minute or two. And then the flour goes in. The flour should definitely cook for 2 to 3 minutes to cook off the raw flour flavor. And it's time for the stout. I'm not using Guinness because I'm celiac, but I was lucky enough to find this gluten-free and vegan beer that's locally made. If you're vegan, I've heard that Guinness is a vegan beer, so just FYI. If you aren't using beer, replace with vegetable broth. And I'm just letting the stew come to temperature before adding the vegetables. After all the veggies go in, I add the broth. I used a total of 3.5 cups of broth in this dish. The amount that you use may vary depending on several factors. I'll discuss this further in the description box. If you cook in the oven, push the pot to the back and leave in for at least 1 hour and 15 minutes. You can definitely cook this longer, which will soften the veggies more and make that broth even more rich and flavorful. A video cannot convey the richness of this broth or the amazing aroma. Some great items to serve with this dish would be a loaf of crusty bread and some cold cannon potatoes. I'll give a link to the cold cannon potatoes recipe at the end of the video. If you've seen any of my videos before, you know I'm going to garnish this dish. So today I'm using parsley. It adds a bit of flavor and color, but isn't required.
What we've got here, doesn't that look amazing? Okay, let's taste it. It is so delicious. It's really, really good. I served it with some cold cannon potatoes that I made. This is just the heartiest dish. It's pretty easy to make. Takes a little bit of time to cook, but it's really delicious.